Jared Thorne never thought he would inherit anything. His aunt had always lived on the edge of the galaxy, a quiet woman no one in the family understood. When the message arrived, blinking on his holoscreen, he almost deleted it by mistake. Inheritance claim approved. Asset, Starship Aurelia. The word seemed empty until he saw the location, a dusty orbital yard at the far edge of the system. Jared sighed. He had no interest in starships, no interest in space travel, and certainly no interest in scavenger yards filled with rusting hulls and dying lights. The galaxy moved on without him. Why should he move for it? Yet something nagged at him. Responsibility. Guilt. Maybe curiosity. When he docked at the yard, the ship looked like a joke. Its hull was scratched, panels missing, and half the lights flickered or were dead. The auction had laughed when it came up. Old junk, they said. Someone left it for a reason. No one had wanted it. Everyone had moved on to bigger, faster, shinier ships. Everyone except him. Inside, the smell hit first, oil, burned circuits, and something alive. A tiny sound, almost lost among the hissing vents, caught his attention. He froze. Another step, careful, deliberate, and he saw it. A creature crouched under the main console, its small body glowing faintly in the dim light. Its eyes were too intelligent for its size, bright blue orbs that watched him without fear. It was a kitten or something like one, alien and fragile. It blinked at him, its tail curling like a question mark. Jared didn't know if it was dangerous. He didn't know if it was even sentient. But the moment their eyes met, he felt a surge of responsibility, stronger than anything he had felt in years. Hey, little guy, he whispered, careful not to scare it. The kitten chirped softly, a sound that made him smile despite the grime and decay surrounding them. It stepped forward, pawing at a console, and the lights flickered in rhythm with its tiny movements. Jared blinked. That shouldn't happen. Not without programming, not without someone at the controls. He crouched closer, studying the panel. The kitten tapped again, this time deliberately, and a series of holographic readouts lit up, showing systems he hadn't expected to exist. Engine power. Navigation controls. Weapon protocols. The ship was far from useless. It had secrets hidden for decades. And this little creature was somehow connected. Jared's pulse quickened. He had been a man who avoided risk, who preferred predictable life on a crowded station. But here, in a forgotten ship at the edge of the galaxy, something inside him stirred. Curiosity. Courage. The instinct to protect something weaker than himself. He spent hours exploring, the kitten always close, watching him. Every panel he touched, every system he tried to power, seemed to respond to the kitten's presence. It was almost intelligent. The more he learned, the more he realized the ship was not just old, it was advanced in ways no one had understood. It had been overlooked, dismissed, left for scraps. Like them. By nightfall, the orbital yard was empty. The hum of distant engines and the faint glow of stars made him aware of how alone they were. Alone in a galaxy that didn't notice, that didn't care about a man or a small alien creature. Yet he felt a strange sense of purpose. He was supposed to be here. They were supposed to be here. Jared didn't sleep. He sat in the cockpit, scanning the old manuals, the kitten perched on his shoulder. Every system had quirks, missing instructions, ancient alien coding. But as he studied, he realized that if he could figure it out, if he could learn, the ship would fly again. He just had to survive the first test. The first test came without warning. A sudden alarm blared, red lights flashing across the console. Power surges rattled the hull. The kitten leapt to the main panel, claws tapping, tail flicking, and somehow the blinking stopped. The ship stabilized for now. Jared stared at the glowing eyes of the kitten. It saved us, he thought. It chose me. He knew this was no ordinary ship. He knew the galaxy had turned its back on it. But something inside him hardened. He would not turn back. He would learn this ship, protect this creature, survive whatever the galaxy threw at them. And then he noticed it, a shadow moving across the far docking bay, something that didn't belong. A shape, sleek and fast, observing the ship. Jared's heart raced. Whoever or whatever it was, they hadn't seen him yet. But they would. The galaxy was watching, and now so was someone else. Jared's fingers tightened on the console. He wasn't just a man with an unwanted inheritance anymore. He was a guardian, a pilot, and a protector. The kitten chirped, nudging his hand. Its glowing eyes seemed to say, "We can do this together." The lights flickered again. The shadow moved closer. And Jared realized for the first time that the galaxy didn't know what it had dismissed. Together, he and the tiny creature inside the old, abandoned ship were about to show it. Jared barely slept that night. He stayed in the cockpit, eyes fixed on the blinking consoles, hands hovering over the controls. The kitten, which he had named Lyra, nestled in the crook of his arm, glowing faintly. Its soft chirps were the only sound besides the hum of failing systems and distant orbital traffic. By morning he made a decision. He couldn't just sit in the yard forever. He had to test the ship, see if it could actually fly. The thought terrified him. The engines were old, the hull fragile, and he had no idea how to operate most of the systems. But sitting still wouldn't protect Lyra, and it wouldn't prove anything. He squared his shoulders. Humans survived by taking risks, by daring where others hesitated. That was what this was about now, survival. He ran through the ship's panels, using the scraps of data Lyra seemed to respond to. She tapped on the main console with her tiny paw, and lights blinked in a sequence he began to understand. Step by step, he powered critical systems, routing energy to engines and navigation. The ship shuddered as it woke from decades of neglect. Sparks flew. Smoke hissed. Alarms screamed. "Easy, easy," he muttered. Lyra chirped in reply as if reminding him to keep going. He opened the hangar bay doors. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, cold and indifferent. Jared's stomach twisted. If he made a mistake, this ship would explode or he would crash, or worse, pirates could notice him. He had no backup. No reinforcements. No one cared what happened to him or this ship. The galaxy had ignored it for a reason. He pushed the throttle. The engines roared with a cough and a roar. The hull vibrated under his hands. Alarms blared again. A screen flashed red, overheating. "Not yet. Not yet," he shouted, slamming buttons at random, relying on instinct more than knowledge. Lyra's glowing eyes darted over the console, her tiny claws hitting a panel that made the warning lights blink out. The ship stabilized. Jared exhaled. "Okay. We're alive. That's good." He laughed, but it sounded hollow even to him. Flying wasn't supposed to be this dangerous. But he had survived the first steps. And that gave him hope. Hope, however, didn't last long. Sensors pinged a sudden movement. He squinted at the display. Shadows. Fast-moving shadows closing in on him. Pirates. Scavengers. The kind who didn't care about old ships or cute alien kittens, they cared about profit and destruction. "They see us," he whispered. His hands tightened on the controls. Lyra hissed. It was tiny, but she sounded fierce. Her fur glowed brighter. Jared realized she wasn't just reacting, she was interfacing with the ship. She could affect systems he didn't even understand. The first missile streaked toward them. Panic surged. Jared threw the ship into evasive maneuvers, swerving through the dense asteroid field near the yard. Rocks scraped the hull. Sparks flew from exposed panels. The engine whined, straining under stress. He could feel the ship fighting for its life, and so was he. Lyra leapt to the console, pressing a series of keys with uncanny precision. The ship's weapons system hummed to life, shooting out a pulse that disabled the pursuing drones. Jared blinked. She had done it. Alone he would have been sitting target practice. Together they were a force to be reckoned with. The pirates weren't deterred for long. They regrouped, larger ships sliding into position, cutting off escape routes. Jared's pulse raced. He had no experience with combat. But humans survived because they adapted, because they thought faster, acted smarter, and never gave up. That's what he had to do now. He studied the display, calculating trajectories and energy outputs. Every second mattered. One wrong move, one miscalculation, and they would be destroyed. He noticed a weak spot in the pirates' formation, a narrow pass between asteroids. Too small for them, but just barely enough for the Aurelia. "Lyra," he said, "we're doing this together?" The kitten chirped. Her glow flared, syncing with the ship's systems. It was as if she understood the plan, the risk, the impossible odds. They darted through the pass. The pirates tried to follow. A miscalculation caused one ship to slam into an asteroid, exploding in a brilliant flare of light. The others hesitated, giving Jared and Lyra a tiny but vital lead. They pushed the engines harder, the ship groaning under the strain, lights flickering across the cockpit. For a moment, nothing existed but them. Human and alien, ship and stars, courage and chance. Jared's mind raced, every decision a gamble, every instinct tested. They were alive because he dared, because he thought faster, because he refused to surrender. Finally the asteroid field cleared. Jared's hands shook, sweat stinging his eyes. The Aurelia was battered, smoking but still intact. The pirates, frustrated and beaten, broke off pursuit. He exhaled, gripping the console. Lyra nuzzled his shoulder, her glow softening. Jared smiled through the adrenaline, feeling something he hadn't felt in years: pride. Not just in himself but in humanity. Alone he had been vulnerable. Together, with courage and ingenuity, he had survived impossible odds. But even as he caught his breath, he noticed something new on the sensors. A blip, small but moving fast, approaching from deep space. It wasn't a pirate. It wasn't anything he recognized. Whatever it was coming straight for them. Jared's stomach dropped. The real test wasn't over. It had only just begun. Jared's hands hovered over the console as the mysterious blip grew larger on the sensor display. Lyra, perched on his shoulder, bristled and hissed, her glow pulsing rapidly. He felt it in his chest. The same thrill, the same fear, the same determination that had carried them through the asteroid chase. Whatever this was, it wasn't ordinary. "Show yourself," he muttered, though he knew the creature, or ship, couldn't hear him. The display flickered, revealing a silhouette that made his stomach tighten. It was huge, unlike any ship he had ever seen. Sleek, black, almost living in appearance, with edges that seemed to shift under the light. No markings, no insignia, only intent. It was coming for him. Lyra chirped sharply and leapt onto the main console, tapping keys with her tiny paws. Jared blinked in surprise as the ship's hidden systems responded to her movements. Lights flickered across the cockpit, hidden weapons activating, shields humming faintly. She wasn't just a passenger. She was the key to unlocking this old, abandoned ship's secrets. Jared's mind raced. He had survived pirates, but this was different. This was intelligent, fast, and dangerous. The ship's movement on the display wasn't random, it was strategic. Whoever or whatever was out there knew how to hunt, how to corner prey. And now that prey was him. Okay, he muttered, fingers flying over the manual controls. He routed power to shields, then weapons, then engines, juggling systems he barely understood. Each adjustment felt like balancing on the edge of a knife. The ship groaned in response but held steady. Lyra chirped again, glowing brighter, as if urging him to keep going. The alien vessel's first strike came without warning. Energy pulses shot toward them, impacting the Aurelia's shields with sparks and a deafening hum. Panels flickered and went dark in places. Jared slammed the console, rerouting energy in a desperate gamble. Lyra hissed and pawed at a panel, activating a hidden defense matrix. The pulses dissipated harmlessly into space. Relief was brief. The vessel didn't retreat. Instead, it circled, probing, testing. It sent out smaller drones, sleek and fast, attempting to jam communications and disable systems. Jared dodged, weaving through the debris of a nearby moon, relying on instinct and split-second calculations. He had no experience in combat, no strategy manuals to follow, only courage, human intuition, and the unspoken guidance of Lyra. The kitten's glow intensified. She tapped keys faster now, activating propulsion boosters, shields, and even a rudimentary targeting array. Jared felt the bond between them grow. It was more than survival. It was trust. It was teamwork across species and worlds. He began to anticipate her movements, guiding the ship in rhythm with her taps, dodging drone attacks, returning fire with energy pulses. Hours seemed to pass in minutes. The alien vessel adapted, predicting his maneuvers. One misstep and the Aurelia would be destroyed. Sparks flew as the hull scraped against a floating satellite, sensors shorting. Jared gritted his teeth. He couldn't fail. Lyra chirped again, more insistently this time, and he realized she had found a pattern in the enemy's movement, a weakness in their formation. Jared took a deep breath. "All right, we're going to do this together," he whispered. He slotted the ship into a narrow asteroid trench, using the rocks as cover. The alien ship hesitated, its enormous frame too large to follow easily. He guided the Aurelia through twists and turns, narrowly avoiding collisions, using his wits to exploit the terrain. Lyra's glow pulsed faster, her claws tapping the console in rapid sequences. Systems that had seemed dead or useless sprang to life. Weapons fired automatically, shields surged, and the ship's engines roared with renewed strength. It was as if she could see what he couldn't, anticipate attacks, and direct the ship with uncanny precision. For a brief, shining moment, Jared felt invincible. Human ingenuity, determination, and courage, combined with the alien kitten's unique abilities, were enough to hold their own against an enemy that should have destroyed them instantly. But then the alien vessel adapted. It fired a concentrated energy beam that tore through the trench ahead, sending asteroids tumbling. Jared slammed the controls, veering at impossible angles. Sparks sprayed across the cockpit and a panel fell, narrowly missing him. Lyra squeaked but held her ground, her glow brighter than ever. A sudden realization hit him. They couldn't win by brute force. The enemy was stronger, faster, smarter. Victory required intelligence, improvisation, and daring, human traits that no machine or alien instinct alone could match. He studied the display, calculating trajectories, energy reserves, and timing. The asteroid field wasn't just cover, it could be a weapon. Jared's mind clicked. He whispered a plan to Lyra, though she seemed to understand without words. He would bait the alien ship, using the terrain and their agility to trap it temporarily. Every second counted. One mistake and they would be vaporized in the void. The shadow of the alien vessel loomed larger. Its massive form blocked starlight, an ominous, silent predator. Jared's pulse raced. Sweat stung his eyes, but he steadied his breathing. Fear had a purpose. Courage had a purpose. And humans survived because they refused to surrender, even when the odds were impossible. Lyra chirped and her glow flared, syncing with the ship's systems. Jared gritted his teeth and steered into the narrowest passage of the asteroid trench. The alien ship hesitated. Its size made it vulnerable. Jared saw the opening, the first real advantage they'd had. He gripped the controls tighter. Lyra's eyes shone like stars, and for the first time, Jared felt something undeniable. Human ingenuity paired with determination and an extraordinary companion could bend the impossible. They weren't out of danger. Not by far. But for the first time he could see a path forward. And as the alien ship hesitated, preparing to strike again, Jared realized one terrifying truth. Whatever this creature was, it wouldn't give up easily. Survival would demand more than courage. It would demand brilliance. Jared's palms ached from gripping the controls. Sweat stung his eyes, but he didn't dare wipe it away. The alien vessel loomed ahead, larger and faster than anything he'd ever faced, its black hull gleaming like a predator in space. Every second it hesitated, the closer it edged toward him. One mistake and the Aurelia would be shredded, along with him and Lyra. He swallowed fear and scanned the sensors. Lyra perched on the console, glowing faintly but focused, tapping at systems he didn't understand. Somehow she could manipulate the ship in ways he couldn't. Her instincts were uncanny. He'd learned to trust her, even as danger pressed in from all sides. The asteroid field that had saved them before was both ally and enemy now. The rocks were too dense to move quickly through and too predictable. The alien ship was adapting, matching his maneuvers, probing every weakness. They needed a gamble, a plan that defied logic. Something daring. Something only a human could attempt. Jared studied the field, calculating angles, speed, timing. His mind raced. The dying star nearby sent bursts of radiation that could blind sensors or fry circuits. If he timed it perfectly, he could use the star's flare as cover, slipping past the alien vessel or even tricking it into colliding with debris. But the timing had to be exact. One miscalculation would vaporize them both. "Lyra," he whispered, "we're going to do something crazy." The kitten chirped sharply, eyes glowing like twin suns as if answering, "I'm ready." He adjusted the ship, engines straining, shields flickering. The alien ship moved to intercept. It fired a pulse and sparks danced across the hull. Jared ignored it, focusing on the star. He calculated the flare's peak. In half a minute, the radiation would blind sensors in the area. That was their only chance. The seconds crawled. Every system screamed in protest. The Aurelia shuddered as he pushed it to limits it hadn't seen in decades. Lyra's claws danced over the console, activating hidden subsystems, energy relays and weapon grids. She was the ship's heart and mind. Together they were a single unit. The flare erupted. The star belched white-hot radiation, bathing the asteroid field in blinding light. Sensors across the galaxy would have gone haywire, but Jared had timed it perfectly. He thrust the Aurelia into a narrow pass between two massive asteroids. The alien vessel hesitated, blinded by the flare, unable to anticipate the precise movement of the ship. Jared gritted his teeth, pulling off a maneuver that should have been impossible. The Aurelia twisted, engines screaming, shields shimmering as the hull scraped past rock faces. Lyra leapt from console to console, tapping and pawing at keys with precision, guiding energy flows to stabilize the ship. The alien ship roared in frustration, firing blindly. Missiles tore through the asteroid field, detonating against rocks instead of hitting the Aurelia. Sparks flew and a piece of the hull peeled away, but they moved faster than any weapon could track. Jared felt every vibration, every jolt, every warning siren as though it were part of his own body. And then came the moment of truth. A gap, a tiny, impossible gap, between two asteroids just barely wide enough for the Aurelia. The alien vessel had no choice but to follow or risk losing them. Jared gritted his teeth. They had no room for error. He accelerated, weaving through the pass at maximum thrust. Lyra's glow blazed, activating the final subsystem she had hidden, something Jared didn't even know existed. An auxiliary engine burst. The Aurelia shot forward like a meteor, leaving the alien ship behind, disoriented and damaged from colliding with asteroids. Jared's heart pounded. Sweat poured down his face. He had done it. They had survived. Against an enemy faster, stronger, smarter, they had improvised, trusted, and conquered. Human courage and ingenuity, paired with Lyra's unique abilities, had turned the impossible into reality. But survival was never enough for Jared. He studied the sensors. The alien ship was retreating but not gone. It would come back stronger, smarter, angrier. And when it did, the Aurelia would have to be ready. He realized something. He wasn't just flying a ship. He was learning it, becoming one with it. He had inherited far more than an abandoned vessel. He had inherited power, potential, and responsibility. Lyra chirped, brushing against his arm. Jared smiled through exhaustion. Her glow softened, but her eyes retained the sharp intelligence that had guided them through the impossible. "We did it, Lyra," he said. "We survived." Even as relief washed over him, a new thought struck him. The galaxy was full of threats, full of ships like the one they had just escaped. If they had survived today, it was because of courage, because of ingenuity, because of refusing to give up. And that was only the beginning. Jared adjusted the ship's systems, patching damage as best he could. Panels still flickered, wires still sparked, but they were alive and they had proven something vital. Humans, when pushed to the edge, could outthink, outfight, and survive against the impossible. Lyra's presence was extraordinary, but it was his choices, his daring, and his refusal to surrender that had made it work. He allowed himself a small smile. They had escaped death today, but tomorrow would bring new challenges. He had no allies, no reinforcements, no guarantee that anything would go smoothly. The galaxy had dismissed him and his inherited ship once. They would not make that mistake again. The Aurelia hummed beneath him, battered but alive. Lyra curled in the cockpit, purring softly, her glow casting gentle light over cracked panels and scorched wires. Jared leaned back, exhausted but alert. They had won a battle, but the war of survival was only beginning. A new blip appeared on the sensors, smaller, faster, and closer than anything they had encountered. Jared's heart sank. This time the threat wasn't just testing them, it was hunting. And somewhere in the galaxy the stakes were about to get higher than ever. Jared tightened his grip on the controls, Lyra chirping sharply. He met her glowing eyes, and for the first time he didn't feel fear. He felt purpose. Determination. Humanity. Whatever came next, he knew one thing for certain. They would fight. And they would survive. The Aurelia drifted through space, battered but alive. Jared Thorne sat in the cockpit, hands resting on the controls, staring at the stars. The adrenaline of their last encounter still pulsed through his veins, but a quiet determination had replaced the fear. Beside him, Lyra, the glowing alien kitten, purred softly, her eyes following every flicker of the ship's panels. They had survived impossible odds, not just against pirates, not just against the unknown alien predator, but against the galaxy itself, which had dismissed them both. Jared had never considered himself a hero. He was a man who had avoided danger, who had preferred ordinary life to risk and adventure. But out here, at the edge of the galaxy, he realized that survival required more than instinct. It required courage, intelligence, and the willingness to fight when no one else would. He had found that courage within himself and in Lyra. Months passed. The Aurelia was repaired, upgraded, and tested again and again. Every system that had seemed useless in the orbital yard now hummed with life. The ship responded to them as if it were aware, guided by Lyra's intelligence and Jared's quick thinking. Together they became more than human and alien. They were a team, a force that challenged the limits of what anyone had believed possible. Word of their exploits spread slowly at first. Stranded colonies rescued from collapsing moons. Pirates outsmarted and disarmed without a single casualty. Lost explorers found and brought home safely. Every act of courage, every daring maneuver, built a legend. The Aurelia, once scorned and abandoned, became a symbol of human ingenuity and determination. And at the center of it all was a small, glowing kitten whose bond with a human pilot had changed everything. Jared remembered the moment he had first found Lyra. The fragile, trembling creature had seemed helpless, abandoned in a ship no one wanted. Now she was the heart of the ship, guiding its systems with intelligence and instinct he could barely understand. And he had grown with her. He had learned to trust his decisions, to act decisively under pressure, to innovate when every rule seemed broken. The galaxy had taught him that humans survived not because they were strongest, but because they refused to give up. One evening, while orbiting a dying star on a routine supply run, Jared received a transmission. It was from a council on a nearby system, one that had once mocked him for inheriting the Aurelia. The message was simple: "We've watched your actions. Your courage and ingenuity have saved countless lives. We wish to meet you." Jared leaned back in his seat. For the first time he felt validation, not for fame or recognition but because humanity had proved its worth through his actions. He looked down at Lyra, who blinked slowly, her glow warm and reassuring. They had started as outcasts, dismissed and overlooked. Now they were valued, respected, even feared by those who had doubted them. But the Aurelia had taught him something more important than recognition. It had taught him that courage and intelligence were tools, yes, but morality was the compass. Every decision, every risk he took had consequences. He had saved lives, but he had also learned that survival meant making choices that others could not. The galaxy would always test him, always challenge him. But now he understood his own strength. He navigated toward a distant colony under threat, the familiar hum of the Aurelia beneath him comforting and powerful. Lyra chirped excitedly, sensing the danger ahead. Jared adjusted the ship's shields and weapons, anticipating the challenges before them. The humans in that colony didn't know him, didn't know the tiny glowing kitten at his side, but they would witness courage in action. They would witness what humans could do when driven by intelligence, heart, and resolve. As the Aurelia entered the colony's orbit, Jared felt a surge of pride. They were ready. He and Lyra moved as one, every calculation precise, every maneuver daring. The colonists watched in awe as the ship intercepted an asteroid on collision course, disarming it with a pulse beam and saving lives in an instant. Cheers erupted from below. Jared smiled at Lyra. "We did it again," he whispered. She purred, brushing against his arm. They had become legends not through firepower or luck, but through human determination, courage, and ingenuity. The galaxy had doubted them, laughed at them, and tried to ignore them. But they had proven something undeniable: humanity could rise above the impossible, face threats head-on, and prevail. He looked out into the void. The stars stretched endlessly, indifferent, yet full of possibilities. Jared knew the Aurelia and Lyra would face many more dangers, many more enemies. But he also knew that no matter how impossible the odds, humans had the power to endure, to innovate, and to triumph. That was their strength. That was their legacy. For the first time Jared felt complete. The abandoned ship he had inherited, the tiny alien kitten no one understood, and his own courage had combined to create something greater than himself. Together they had rewritten the rules of survival, proven the worth of human ingenuity, and inspired countless others. And somewhere deep in the galaxy, in the quiet hum of a ship once thought worthless, a human and a glowing kitten prepared for the next impossible challenge. Because that was what humans did. They fought. They survived. They prevailed. The galaxy had dismissed them once. It would never make that mistake again.